Kum Len Black Gemara. We are up to Daf Nun Gimel Amar Aleph. This is the Gemara for Sunday, second day of Chodesh El. So we have a number of questions here. We're talking about Kesuvos B'nei Dakri, the Kesuva that's extra and over, but that the Kesuva, the mother passes away, and then the father obligates himself to that the Kesuva itself that should be distributed amongst her own children. That's talking about the dowry that he receives from the father-in-law, and then the rest of the state is distributed equally amongst all the children that he has from the various wives. So he asked an interesting question. So about 20 lines on top of the page. Asked a question. What happens if she sold her ksuva to her husband, as if she's forsaken her rights on the ksuva and sold it to the husband for money? Obviously, you pay risk money here. She's paying a lot less, maybe 10 cents to the dollar, 20 cents. She's urgent need of money, because if she predeceases her husband, there is no ksuva. It's only if she outlives her husband or she's divorced that she receives a ksuva. So the person who's buying is taking a risk. So you pay a much smaller amount. Hopefully you'll have a windfall, a big windfall, but otherwise you can lose everything. So she sold her ksuva to her husband. And so the question is, yesh la ksuva in Akron, that she could give up all her rights, including this right. It's called the Tanai ksuva. We had in the Mishnah yesterday that this is one of the conditions of the ksuva. Even if you don't include that in the ksuva, it's automatic. The ksuva in Akron and the ksuva in Akron. Do we say because she has sold it, so she's given up all her rights, including that right that her children should end up? No, if this person dies after he bought the ksuva from his own wife, the Bnei Dakrin don't get any advantage over all the other children. Amalei says Rabba to Rav Nachman, why are you only asking a case where she sold it? Why don't you ask a question also? Let's say she didn't sell it. She just said she loves her husband so much. Don't worry about the ksuva. I'm meichel you whatever you owe me in the ksuva. The $100, the $200. I'm meichel you completely, and everything else you added on. And that's much more common than she's selling the ksuva to her own husband or selling it desperate for money. Amalei said Rabbi Nachman said no. My question is regarding a sale, and the reason why I'm asking the question of a sale is not because she got some money from it, and therefore, if in exchange of the money she gave up her ksuva, and therefore my question is how much did she give up? That's not my question. The case where she sold it, and because why would she sell it? The only reason she sold it is she's desperate for money and she's prepared to take a big loss. So we say that she had no choice, but she had to sell it. Nevertheless, it's a possibility she might lose all her rights. As if she got hit by 100 straps made with the metal, she had no choice. She's being hurt. Is my boy, where she voluntarily decided just to give it up for no benefit whatsoever, and she didn't have to do it. Of course, she gave everything up. There's no question to talk about. My question is only about a sale. When she was desperate, she had no choice. How much did she give up? That she also wanted to give up her children's rights. Says the Gemara. That Rava lays down the groundwork and says as follows. Particularly, there's no question to me. Let's say she sold the ksuva on the market. It was $200 promised her in the ksuva, and she sold it for $50 because she desperately needed $50. Right, and that person took a risk. $50 could turn to $200, could turn to naught. But they decided it's worthwhile risk. Because if she predeceases her husband, it goes to her husband, and they get nothing. So what have you sold to other people? Then yesh lo ksuvas b'nei dakri. And then what happened was she died before her husband. So therefore, no money went to these buyers. They basically had a loss, and all the money ended up with the husband. So the fact that she sold the ksuva had no impact whatsoever. So therefore, yesh lo ksuvas b'nei dakri. The ksuva remains intact. Nothing changed. So the b'nei dakri is there. The fact that she sold it sounding like she's saying to us she doesn't really care. No, she was desperate. She needed the money. So therefore, it makes sense. My time is used so the money forced her. On the other hand, if she forgave her ksuva to her husband, she had no reason to do that. She forgave the ksuva to her husband. Then she completely gave it up, including, that means she's taking the whole ksuva lightly. So she gave everything up, including the rights of her children. But my time, why could she was meichel? My question is, boy, what about ksuva? She sold it to her husband. And this is what I'm not talking about before. Rabbi now is explaining his question. So if you sold to other people, definitely nothing changed because she died first, and the Kesuvos didn't change hands. Stay with the husband, and he yashed it from her, and everything is back to normal. If she was Michael, but she didn't have to, gave everything up. The question is, she sold it, but to her husband. So at the end of the day, she sold it to her husband, nothing changed. Again, she died before her husband, so there's no Kesuva there, and therefore everything stays exactly the same. He yashes her, he yashes the Kesuva, and the children yash him, so maybe they should continue being doctrine. Or maybe this is different. Why? Is it considered to other people and therefore nothing happened and everything stays intact the way it was? Or perhaps or do we say that it's as if she was Michael to her husband? Why? Because since she gave him back the Kesuva, so he has a Kesuva in his hands, not so much as a Yerusha, but maybe, because she was Meichelit, and it shows that she's taking the whole Kesuva lightly, so therefore maybe the children lose out as well. After you ask the question, you resolve it. If she sells it to the husband, it's no different than selling it to other people. And since she predeceased her husband, nothing really changed. Like selling to other people, nothing really changed, and therefore the children still have their rights. Next question. So we have a question on that. Let's say she was married and then her husband, an 8 came along and said your husband died, and she married a second person and then her husband reappeared. The need has to leave both people. She loses the Kesuva from both. She leaves both husbands. And Mesa, if she dies, even though the Bezdin allowed her to get married, and the basis for the Bezdin allowing her is because we're sure that she would do her own research and make sure that her husband actually died. So what happens is that if she died, nobody inherits her Kesuva. The obvious question is, you just said she doesn't have a Kesuva, so what's it to inherit? But we tried to understand. There is a Kesuva coming, you just said there is no Kesuva. Papa explained. We're talking about Kesuvos b'nidake. I want that there is no Kesuvos b'nidake, she loses that Kesuvos b'nidake. If she died while both husbands are alive, and therefore both husbands inherit her, their children do not get their entitlement of b'nidake. When their father dies, they don't say, "Oh, well, the dowry that our mother brought in, we should get that between ourselves." You don't say that. Now the question is, why not? Hachinami, you're said it for when there's an excuse, like when you sell it, you had no choice. She's not treating Sula lightly, and therefore all the conditions remain. Hachinami lema yetzer on. So say the same here. Why did she get remarried? She doesn't want to be alone, and therefore she was desperate, and therefore there's a valid reason in it. Not because it treats the Sula lightly. So why don't we say the same thing, that it stays intact? Says the mother, you're right, but you know what? It's a different reason altogether. There we penalize it because she didn't do her homework thoroughly, and that's why her own children have to suffer as well. Yosef Ravin Bar Chanina Kamed Rav Chizda, Ravin Bar son of Chanina sat before Rav Chizda, Yosef come much better than Rav Lazar, and he said the name of Rav Lazar. He says, Moichelas Ksuva lebaila, if she forgoes the Ksuva, the husband, Ein la mezainis. In addition to what we said before about there's no b'nidakrin, now we're saying also she no longer gets provided for. The husband dies before her. Usually the state has to take care of her, but not in this case, because taking care of her is part of the Kesuva, and she gave up the whole Kesuva. He said to him, so Chizda said to Rabin, if you wouldn't have said the name of the great man called Rabbi Lazar, I would have argued with you. I would have said, this is how you pay it back. She's being so nice to her husband. She's saying, no, I'm foregoing the whole Kesuva, you don't have to give me $200 and so on. And that's how you pay it back. That you say, that's it, we're penalizing you. You no longer get any sustenance from the state. Like Thomas Rama Besa, that kind of a house, evil will never leave that house. I would have argued, but now I'm not going to argue. Another situation, Yosef, Nachman, and Ula, and Avima Barapapi, these three people will say together, Yosef, the son of Ami, sat before them. Also, a person came along, he's his fiance. Actually, he got engaged to her. He's betrothed. Died. And now remember, one of the Tanai Ksuva is that he has to bury her. And this is like a comment. Now, why do you have to bury her? There's two ways of understanding. One is because since he gets from the Kesuva, the dowry, so in return, he buries his wife. It's part of the legal conditions. Or because he doesn't have to pay out the $200 of the Kesuva, therefore he got the money, he should pay for the Kura. It's two ways of, and right now the Gemara thinks it's the latter. It's because of $200 he kept. So the Gemara says, she said, he wants to know whether he has to bury her or not. They're only engaged, they never get married. They said to him, Zil cover, you have to bury her, or you have Luksuvasa, or give her all entitlements of the Ksuva, because this is in lieu of the Ksuva. In other words, you're getting the $200, you don't have to pay it out, pay for all the burial costs. Chi disagreed. He said, Tanina, we learned in the Mishnah, what happens if Ishtay Arusa, we had this already before Nivamas. If his wife was an Arusa and like Oinen and she died, he doesn't have to follow the laws of Oinen, but like Metamel is a coin. He does not go ahead and he doesn't have to go Metamel. That's 7 people that are coins allowed to be Metamel to. And here he doesn't. He's not allowed to be Metamel because not his wife. It's only his betrothed. The chain he likewise she. She doesn't sit for him if he dies. And she's not metamet him. Now, Bas Kohen is allowed to become tummy. So metamet means that it's not a mitzvah to go ahead and to the 7 to go ahead to the funeral is not really a husband. And Rashi seems to learn here that even a Bas Kohen has a mitzvah to go ahead and be metame herself with her husband, but this is not one of them because it's not really a husband, it's only a being. So Rashi holds that there's a mitzvah on the woman as well, not just on the man to the woman, but the woman to the man to go, which is other Rishonim disagree. They say that it's only on the Kohen, not on the wife to the husband, that she has to be metame herself. So he continues, what's the proof? Then it says a mace. What a mace if she dies? She doesn't inherit her because it's not really a husband. Mace who? But if he dies, she collects ksuva. So time is the only reason the message because he died. How mace he? But if she would have died, there is no ksuva involved. Ain't no ksuva. There is no ksuva. It sounds like if there's no ksuva, doesn't have to pay $200, nor does he have to keep the conditions of the ksuva, which is to bury her. So why do you guys really have to bury her? So my timer, what's the reason? Because in the Kesuvos it says, you're going to get married if she predeceased him. Why is it that he doesn't have to pay for the burial rights in exchange of the $200 that he gets to keep? Because they used to write in the Kesuvos that when you marry somebody else, you take the Kesuvos. So if she died, she cannot marry anybody else, so she's not entitled to the Kesuvos. And therefore nobody inherits anything at all. Therefore he doesn't have to give. Not the pshat that he's getting back the $200. There was never a chiv in the first place because the chiv was only if she gets married to somebody else, but she predeceased him, she died while they were engaged, and therefore he doesn't have to bury her either. Abaya said, Zilu go out. Amlilei, tell him shkila tevasach. You think that we owe you a big thank you? You think we owe you a big thank you because you came on and shadya achizer, go throw it on the thorn bushes. Why? You're coming along and telling us something new. We already know from Rav Hoshia. Rav Hoshia said this. Rav Hoshia said that because in the condition the Kesuvos is that she can marry somebody else, now that she cannot marry anybody else, therefore he doesn't have to go ahead and bury her. She doesn't have to and so on. You're not telling us anything new. Okay, now we're going to ask a number of questions. Rav, regarding this Kesuvos. Rav learned added to love from the Gubrin. Rav says it says in the Mishnah that she can remain, that the daughters remain there until they grow up. What does it grow up mean? Rav says added to love from the Gubrin until they get married. You have to sustain the daughters. And Levi says added to Bagra until they become 12 and a half years old. So the more asks the question, Rav, according to Rav, after the Bagra, even though she's over 12 and a half, you still have to take him to sustain her, even though she didn't get married. And Levi, after the instant she got married, if she's only 11 or 12, you continue sustaining her even though she has a husband. So Gemara explains her argument. She became an adult but didn't get married, or into the Baga got married, didn't become adult. There's no argument that what there is no argument that it belongs to her. Keep leading when they're arguing, but Arusa, they're arguing the case. What happened if she got engaged with Loi Baga? She only got engaged, didn't get married. Is engaged enough to say that you no longer have to sustain her because her husband to be will take care of her or not? And so to Levi learned in his brayse. So Levi also, besides that, he also used to bring a whole bunch of brayses on the whole shas. Add to Bagrin until she becomes an adult. The Yamti Zimne in the interim, and the time came to get married. Even if she didn't get married, but 12 months expired since they got engaged. And we learned in the beginning of the Masechta, then you have to take care of her. Tarti, what you have to do both, become an adult and get married. Ella oite Bagrin, either you become 12 and a half, or Yamti Zimne in the interim, but came time to get married. So we see that's the argument. The Levi holds you get married, and Abba holds as soon as you got engaged. This is actually an argument tonight. Until when you have to provide for your daughter after she gets engaged. Tanya Rabbi Yosef learned added Yeheven. He quoted a brayse where it says the word Yeheven. Yeheven means that they join together. Of what degree? It's not clear. See, boy, our question is, Havoy does it mean the degree that they just got engaged and therefore you no longer have to provide for it, or Havoy didn't see, or it means actually they got married. Take her, we're not sure. Me and Chizar Yosef, Mishmiach ben Rabbi Yehuda. Did you hear from Rabbi Yehuda? The name of Shmuel or Rab. Arusa Yeshla Mazayin, Eila Mazaynis. Let's say an Arusa, a woman that you're only engaged to, and she was an orphan, so therefore there's no one to take care of her at home, only her siblings. Do the siblings have to take care of her from the state? Because while she's already engaged to a man, but she's not married to, or not? Amalei Mishmar Shmil, I never heard, but Misvara. I would think, if you ask me my personal opinion, I would say less low. She no longer gets sustenance because she's engaged. Her husband will take care of her. Given the ears, once she's engaged, her husband doesn't want his wife to suffer, so he'll take care of her. I disagree with you. We didn't hear. You're just saying an opinion. I'll give you a contrary opinion. You think logically she should receive kimla begavo. I think that I think from a svara she should get from the siblings, and the reason is since the husband doesn't really know her, he's going to find out who she is when they get married. She doesn't really know because they just got engaged and now 12 months are apart. He's not going to just throw money away. I think logically the siblings must take care of her. Yigidam is another version, just the opposite. Same idea, but a different name. Amalei, Mishmel Shmili, I didn't hear, but I think logically she should be taken care by her brothers. Since the husband to be doesn't know her, I won't throw money away just for not. Amalei, said the opposite. Even Mishmel Shmila, if we didn't hear it, I would say less. She's not entitled to anything. Even is, of course, she's engaged to her husband. He wouldn't want her to be degraded. Okay, so we have now a number of questions, 5 questions in total. Says the Gemara, question number 1. They asked Rav Sheshes the question, Mam Enes, a girl who was married up by a sibling, she's an orphan, Yeshla Mezainis, and then when she leaves her husband, she was married and everything else, but she leaves her husband under respectively. Does she go back to her family and she gets provided by them or not? By Yeshla Mezainis. It says, we learned. Almana bebeisavia, it says, Almana in the house of a father. In other words, she's only got engaged. Ugrusha beisavia, and so to a divorcee in the house of another. She only got engaged to somebody, she's still living at home. Visha Medis, Yamizavia, or her husband died and she's waiting for her brother-in-law, she's sitting at home. The Yeshla Mezainis, in all those instances, she's entitled to be provided for. Why? Because she never got married, she's only engaged. Rabbi Yehuda, and then she got divorced, or she became a widow, she's still at home. Rabbi Yehuda says, he adds, as long as she's still home, Yeshla Mezainis, she's provided for. Ain't the base of she's not home, ain't the Mezainis not provided for. Now, what's Rabbi Yehuda disagreeing with the comment? Yehuda, Heinz, and the comment, they're saying the same thing. If she's still at home and got engaged, okay, she's taken care of, got married, and then she gets divorced, whatever it is, she left home. Elolav must be the difference is Mamenes, this girl who walked out on a marriage. Hakama holds Isla. She now undid whatever she did, she unraveled it, she as if she never left home. So she's provided for from the state. And Rabbi Yehuda holds Lesla. Rabbi Yehuda says that she's not entitled to anything else because the fact is she got married, she left home. Once she left home completely because she got married, even though she undid it, it's too late. Question number 2. Boy, Lishloki had a question. Bas Yivam, let's say the daughter of the sister-in-law, so Reuben died, and Shimon married Reuben's wife, and now they had a daughter. That daughter, remember, we learned that the ksuba that Reuben's wife is entitled to from Shimon is actually Reuben's estate. So the question is, Yesh Lamazainis. Does she entitled to the estate of Shimon or not, and she gets provided for or not? What's the question? Since we learned Kesuvos Daf, since the money, the lien is on the first husband, less low, she gets nothing from the second husband, no, not provided for. Dilma, keeping the less, we learned before that Reuven doesn't have. Medicine, if Reuven doesn't have enough to provide, you go to the second one. So therefore, maybe she is connected to the second one. East law, take away her question. Third question. Boy Rablazo is a question. What about Bas Shnia? He married someone that Midrabanan is forbidden to you. It's a second tier. And they had a daughter. And we learned before that all those parts of the Ksuba which keep you together are null and void. All those parts of the Ksuba that tell you to she should leave you, for example, giving the $200, that she's entitled to. So the question is, Yesh la Mazainis or Ein la Mazainis? Does she, after the husband died, is he provided for from the state or not? The shaila is keeping less like ksuba. On the one hand, since she loses out on the ksuba, anything that keeps them together. Less la mezayna, since mezayna is like part of a condition of the ksuba, so she loses that provision as well. Dilma, and this is talking about the daughter. Dilma, The mother of the Suda, she committed a sin, Konsurabon, we penalize her. All those entitlements of the Ksuba to keep it together doesn't have. But the daughter, we're talking about the daughter, does she have any mezainis? The daughter of this woman. Obviously, she didn't do anything wrong. Maybe the Konsurabon, we didn't penalize her and let the daughter be provided for. Teiku, good question. Next question. But you don't have a question. Bas Arusa, the daughter of an Arusa, so he only engaged and he lived with his. He didn't get married. They only got engaged, and they had a daughter. And the question is, now there is a ksuba starting the moment you got engaged, but you don't write a ksuba until you get married. So the question is, yes, the daughter, does she entitled to mazainis or ain't mazainis? Not entitled to mazainis. The question is, keeping these ksuba. The fact is that technically there's a ksuba involved. So therefore, Isla, so also the provisions that take care of the daughters there as well. Ksubas, Bonson. Ideal mode we say. Kivan, the light you can we don't actually write it down until you get married, less it doesn't have. Teku, remain with the question.